Battle of the Beasts, python versus alligator. Part of the enormous snake in the gator's mouth, the rest wrapped around its body. This was taken Friday on the 10th hole of the Fiddler's Creek Golf Club.
The Florida Everglades is facing a new threat, an invasion unlike anything before. For centuries, the alligator ruled these waters, but now an unexpected invader is changing the rules of survival. The destruction is massive, drawing the attention of many, and it's only getting started. The footage we've seen is just a tip of the iceberg. What lies ahead could be far worse. Is this monster truly unstoppable, or can we still find a way to turn the tides before it's too late? The Everglades Crisis, documenting the ecological impact. The Everglades is one of Florida's unique natural wonders. It's a vast swamp with thick air, carrying the scent of cypress bark and dark water flowing beneath. Down here, you can hear frogs chirping, the growls of gators and the buzzing of insects. Every sound has its own story. On a remote bank, a wildlife camera was set to catch any known threats. For hours, the footage was normal. An egret wading through the water, a raccoon sniffing close to the lens, and then, all of a sudden, the camera captures a massive disturbance at the edge of the water. It's not the usual slow movement of an alligator, but a wild and frantic movement. Water splashes high above the bank, a tail thrashes, and a snap is heard. Then, just like that, it's over. The surface quickly settles, and the only thing left is a ripple moving toward the shore, a ripple that is too large for any creature the Everglades hold. If you know anything about Florida's wetlands, you would know that they've been struggling for years. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, FWC, has admitted the ecosystem is already overwhelmed. We're all familiar with the headlines about giant Burmese pythons, aggressive tegu lizards, and invasive iguanas spreading across Florida's ecosystem. These non-native predators have completely changed the environment, wiping out many native birds and mammals, turning what used to be a lively swamp into an empty place. The FWC officially confirms the python as a high-risk invasive species, and for good reason. It's an apex predator with no rules and no enemies in the Everglades. While other non-native species, like the noisy monk parakeets or the destructive feral hogs, certainly cause trouble for the habitat, the python is actively emptying the swamp. It's the ultimate killing machine. Studies show these snakes have caused severe declines in almost every native mammal population. We're talking about almost all the raccoons, opossums, and marsh rabbits vanishing from the most areas. They're simply not there anymore because the python has eaten them. What the camera caught, the struggle, the water splashing everywhere, matches what you'd expect from a python. These snakes are strong enough to squeeze and swallow animals as big as adult deer or even alligators. That snap sound could be the python crushing an animal that's trying to fight back, or maybe an alligator finally grabbing a huge snake. The Everglades is home to more than one deadly predator. The footage likely shows two giants locked in a life-or-death battle in the dark. Could one of these creatures be the invasive species the FWC is spending millions to remove through programs like the Python Action Team and the Florida Python Challenge? The truth is, that sound in the dark, the tail thrashing, the snap, was almost definitely a Burmese python winning. This story isn't about some animal swimming across the ocean. It all began in American suburbs, with a few careless choices, a hurricane, and a small problem that quickly turned into Florida's biggest monster. To understand how this foreign invader took over, we have to go back a few decades. The first sign that something was seriously wrong didn't come from the dramatic footage. Rangers and wildlife survey teams working in the Everglades started noticing something was wrong. They noticed that it wasn't just a few animals missing, but entire native populations were disappearing. Areas that once had families of playful otters were now completely empty. Even raccoons and opossums, usually found everywhere, seemed to have vanished completely. Large wading birds were disappearing rapidly across South Florida. The disappearance of the birds was mainly due to habitat destruction and disruption of natural water flow, which are crucial for their survival. On top of that, their nests and food sources were being constantly raided. The biologists were baffled by the sheer scale of the problem. Their data showed that while populations of native predators like alligators stayed steady, the number of small and mid-sized mammals disappearing was rising rapidly. This was a slow but large-scale environmental collapse. Reports confirmed that even the white-tailed deer were being targeted. Scientists knew the python was consuming them, but they needed to assess the full extent of the damage. The food chain was clearly breaking, but the existing information wasn't strong enough to explain how bad it was. The increase in the sudden disappearance of mammal activity pushed federal and state agencies to take action. Groups like the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, and the National Park Service, NPS, launched large-scale studies to understand the impact on predators. They needed evidence to uncover what was causing this loss. That's why researchers started setting up motion-triggered cameras in the areas where animals were vanishing the fastest. These weren't ordinary routine monitoring tools. They were placed to measure the change in the frequency of mammal sightings over time, to determine the extent of their disappearance. The goal was straightforward: catch the culprit in the act, or at least capture clear evidence of its destructive impact. They hoped to track the elusive Florida panther or understand how changes in water flow were affecting the area, but recorded the actual monster behind the destruction. This recording confirmed that the FWC's list of high-risk invaders was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Now they had proof that this monster was none other than the Burmese python, and the surprising part? How it got here didn't begin in the wild, but inside someone's living room. To really understand why the python problem is so serious, you have to understand the Everglades itself. The Everglades isn't a normal swamp. It's more like an arena. It has always been a battleground where life and death are constantly at play. The top predator here has been around for ages: the American alligator. These amazing reptiles are the rulers of the swamp, often growing over 11 to 13 feet long. The largest alligator ever verified in Florida measured over 14 feet. That's roughly the length of a small car. They're huge and powerful. Every Floridian knows just how strong they are. There's a lot of verified history of them attacking prey, including large animals like deer and, sadly, even humans. For centuries, they've been the undisputed kings of the waterways, with no native animals able to challenge their reign. Then there is the native ghost, the Florida panther. They were once practically extinct, almost completely driven out of existence by human development. Now, thanks to dedicated conservation work, these incredible, beautiful cats are slowly starting to roam parts of the swamp again. Seeing the track of a panther is a thrilling sign of a recovering ecosystem, a native force that is slowly climbing its way back up the food chain. The Everglades already had a lineup of natural predators that scientists knew well. The ecosystem was tough, but it had rules, until the Burmese python arrived. This wasn't a native species making a comeback, but an ecological invasion. Pythons were first confirmed breeding in the wild back in the 1980s, right when the exotic pet trade was booming. Starting in the 1980s and 90s, Burmese pythons became popular pets across South Florida. People bought them when they were small, but these snakes grow incredibly fast, reaching lengths of over 10 feet in just a few years. When they got too big, too difficult, or too expensive to feed, many owners simply released their pet. This was the primary reason the snakes got their start. The second major problem was when Hurricane Andrew ripped through South Florida in 1992. The Category 5 storm destroyed a private reptile breeding facility near the Everglades. This event released hundreds of pythons directly into the wilderness. Regardless of whether it was intentional or accidental, the result was the same. In just a few decades, this foreign constrictor took over the entire South Florida wilderness. The major difference between the panther, the alligator, and the python is their overwhelming numbers. Today, the native Florida panther is still critically endangered, numbering only about 120 to 230 subadults remaining in the wild. But the Burmese python estimates are in the hundreds of thousands, maybe even higher. This completely throws the balance off. It means that the biggest danger in the swamp is no longer the 13-foot alligator you can see, but the 20-foot python hiding in the brush, multiplying at an alarming rate. This environment, which usually hides more than it reveals, has turned into a free-for-all. The native predators are being outmatched by an enemy they don't even recognize because this enemy was never meant to be a part of their world. The real puzzle isn't just how the pythons got here, it's why they thrived so fast and what made them the ultimate ecological predator in this already dangerous landscape. When scientists first checked the memory cards from the motion-activated cameras, they didn't see the image of a giant snake every time. Instead, the footage was somewhat unexpected. Instead of the busy wildlife they had hoped to see, the videos mostly showed a lack of activity. They weren't just looking to catch a glimpse of the snake, they were also keeping track of how often mammals showed up, and those numbers were falling to dangerously low. This was the proof they needed. The cameras were placed in spots where earlier surveys had shown healthy numbers of raccoons, deer, and marsh rabbits. But now, the footage only captures these animals in short moments, or not at all. This drop in native animal sightings was the strongest sign of what was happening. The scientists were able to quantify the python's impact, confirming a 90 to 100% collapse in the observation rates of mammals like the raccoon, opossum, and marsh rabbit in the python zones. The biologists found that native animals weren't just avoiding certain trails. They had mostly disappeared from entire habitats. Places that were once full of life, marked by tracks, signs of foraging, and the movements of otters and bobcats, now show almost no trace of them at all. The disappearance of these mid-sized animals disrupted the entire food chain, confirming that the python had done more than just hunt. It had greatly altered the ecosystem. The absence of wildlife recorded by the motion sensors was measurable proof that the python had achieved absolute dominance. The cameras had done their job. They showed that the python wasn't just living here, it was thriving. Its dominance was now a fact, affecting the behavior and survival of every native creature. This confirmed their fears. These creatures weren't just present. They had taken ecological control and were about to reveal the true reason behind their overwhelming success. The apex predator emerges. Evidence from the swamp. Early camera footage showed the pythons were in charge, but people didn't really understand how serious the threat was until they saw how huge the snakes were. These pythons were massive. Researchers have caught pythons weighing over 200 pounds and stretching more than 19 feet long. That's as long as a car and as heavy as a big adult. The snakes are perfectly built for the Florida swamps, with an appetite that never seems to end. The crisis became impossible to ignore when scientists captured something unbelievable. Several confirmed cases of pythons swallowing full-grown white-tailed deer. One well-known example was a 15-foot python in Collier County that ate a massive 77-pound deer. This showed that these invasive snakes weren't just feeding on small animals, they were directly competing with the endangered Florida panther for its main food source. Nothing in the ecosystem was safe anymore. The impact of this feeding frenzy is truly devastating. Studies show that the rapid rise of pythons has almost wiped out important native mammals in Everglades National Park. The numbers are staggering. Raccoons and opossums have disappeared by more than 90%, bobcats have dropped over 87%, and marsh rabbits and native foxes have been nearly wiped out from the area. This clearly indicates that the python faces no real competition in the ecosystem, letting it grow and feed without limits. While the largest confirmed pythons pulled from the swamp measured up to 19 feet and weighed over 125 pounds, the climate and endless food supply suggest they could grow even bigger. Pythons from their native habitat, Asia, grow even larger, and nothing in the Everglades is stopping them. The most frightening reality is that the python's success is outgrowing the Everglades itself. For years, the snakes were largely contained to the national park, but their expanding population and endless hunger have started pushing them north and east. Scientists now document these colossal predators using the network of Florida canals as python highways, reaching coastal and brackish territories. Worse, evidence of crossbreeding suggests the python might be adapting to survive colder temperatures, meaning the challenge for Florida is no longer just about saving a national park. It's about stopping an explosion that is threatening to spread across the entire southern United States. We've learned a lot about the predators and invaders, but what about those caught in the crossfire? For centuries, the American alligator ruled the swamp without any competition. Now, with the surge of pythons, even this powerful predator is facing new dangers. During routine health checks, biologists began to notice troubling signs that the balance of the swamp is being thrown off. Many alligators had deep, unusual scars, wounds that didn't match the usual scrapes from fights with other gators or native animals. These injuries were often long and severe, showing that a large predator was attacking in ways the alligators weren't ready for. The real evidence of the alligators' defeat was in their weight. The pythons, with their endless appetite, had eaten nearly all the small and medium-sized mammals. This showed clearly in the alligator population. Studies found many gators were starving because their main food, raccoons, opossums, and marsh rabbits, had disappeared. The king was hungry, and the new ruler was to blame for emptying the whole fridge. It wasn't just the alligators acting strange. Wildlife trackers started reporting observations of disturbed nests, particularly those of wading birds or native turtles. These weren't the messy, obvious attacks you'd see from a bear or coyote. The way the nests were disturbed was different, more efficient, and unlike anything a native predator would do. It was the python, using its huge size to overpower even the safest nests, snatching eggs and young right from under the parent's watch, further reducing the native population's ability to recover. This collection of facts, scarred gators, starving gators, and nest failure, all point to the same conclusion. The python has made every problem in the Everglades worse. The new invader is changing the survival game by starving the native king and wiping out its subjects. It's now clear that a foreign force is pushing native predators off their land and out of their hunting grounds. The old swamp management methods just don't work anymore. It's time for scientists to take action. The scientists had their camera footage, but for most people, the crisis became real through stories from those who know the swamp best. Hunters, trackers, and local fishermen, people who've lived there their whole lives, started sharing what they'd seen. They didn't always have clear sightings, but the most common proof was signs that something huge was lurking nearby. Hunters in the preserve have reported seeing a huge ripple in the water, with the swamp grass parting, as if something large was moving just beneath the surface. The size of the disturbance made it clear the animal was way bigger than any usual alligator or native snake. The sound was something else entirely. Park rangers and field agents near Big Cypress National Preserve started hearing unusual noises, not a roar or growl, but a low thumping, like the heavy movement of a huge body pushing through thick brush and fallen logs. They knew the sounds of panthers, bears, and alligators well, but this was different, coming from a creature that wasn't trying to stay quiet. The most convincing reports came from surprising sightings along the canals. A local fisherman near the Loxahatchee spotted a huge, dark shape moving through the water faster than any alligator he'd seen before. The shape was too long and smooth to be anything familiar. But just days later, a 17-foot python was found in a retention pond near a neighborhood about 30 miles away. These encounters made it clear that the monster had escaped the park and was using the man-made waterways to spread its hunting grounds into areas where people lived. The problem was no longer contained. Now, humans were sharing space with the giant snake, which posed a serious challenge for the FWC. How do you stop a creature that can hide anywhere and has grown too big to catch by hand? The only option left was to rely on the one thing the pythons truly feared. The reports and shadow sightings had stirred up panic among the public, but it was the scientists who could do something about it. They kept the camera networks running in the deepest parts of the preserve, waiting for a clip that would finally reveal what was going on. They were hunting for an undeniable sign of something violent. Then one night, they finally captured it on camera. The footage begins in the dead of night. Then, suddenly, the water bursts violently in one spot. After studying the movement, the scientists knew they were witnessing a fight between two massive creatures. They could make out the powerful coils of a massive constrictor, its strong coils tightening, mixed with rolling, struggling motions of a huge alligator trying to break free. This wasn't just a sighting. It was a brutal battle caught on film. The struggle didn't last long, but what came next surprised the researchers. In the darkness, just before the fight pulled them under, the camera caught a huge silhouette looming over the water. Then, two glowing eyes appeared, set wider apart than any gator or panther they knew. The image was striking and fed right into the public's wildest ideas about a swamp monster. This single clip marked a breakthrough. It provided visual proof that the ecological battle was happening at the highest level, with the python taking on the reigning champion. At the same time, it offered enough blurry, suggestive, and unsettling footage to give experts something new and troubling to study. The time for simple watching was done. Now, it was time to show the footage to the world's top experts and figure out exactly what they were facing. The ecological reckoning, facing the future. As soon as the blurry footage reached the scientific community, the focus shifted from questioning whether the python was a threat to wondering what kind of creature it had become. The experts who had dedicated their lives to studying these swamp animals stepped up to examine the striking silhouette and the recorded fight. They quickly dismissed these exaggerated claims, but their more grounded explanations were just as unsettling. The first theory focused on unchecked growth. Years of breeding without control in an environment full of food could easily create an enormous python, possibly the biggest constrictor snake ever recorded in North America. This creature's constant hunger could explain why it would dare to attack a full-grown alligator. Another theory, which was far more complicated, the shadowy figure could be a hybrid, a mix between different invasive snake species. It might have the size of a Burmese python combined with the toughness or aggression of another exotic reptile. If that's true, it would be like a biological weapon the swamp wasn't ready to handle. Another idea was that this could be a sick or starving top predator, a native animal pushed to desperate and aggressive behavior. Scientists observed that constant stress and lack of food might make even an alligator fight its own kind or attack animals it normally wouldn't. This pointed to the whole ecosystem starting to break down. Beyond the theories of super snakes, the experts also focused on the verifiable biological threats. Analysis showed that pythons were not just competing with native species for food, they were also introducing deadly biological agents. One major discovery confirmed pythons carried the Asian lungworm parasite, which they were actively transmitting to native Florida snake species. This added to the severity of the crisis. The invasive predator was literally sickening the native ecosystem. Furthermore, as the footage was studied more closely, it became clear the experts didn't all agree. Some were sure they saw the snake's huge, dark shape, but others refused to confirm anything, saying the blurry images and strange eye reflection made it impossible to be certain. That refusal to confirm only intensified the public's fear. If the people who knew the swamp best couldn't agree on what they were looking at, the Everglades had just revealed a problem far worse than anyone expected. Facing the public frenzy sparked by unconfirmed growls and the blurry chaos of the footage, the experts had to rely on solid evidence. They shifted attention away from monster stories and focused on the real crisis, the collapse caused by the pythons. The true horror wasn't the rumors, but the verified damage. The Everglades had experienced a clear ecosystem collapse in every area where pythons had taken over. The data from published studies is alarming. Marsh rabbits and important mid-sized mammals have almost vanished in the hardest-hit areas, with numbers dropping by about 99%. Other crucial species have faced similar devastating declines. The once large white-tailed deer populations also crashed, wiping out the main food source for the critically endangered Florida panther. This statistical reality showed that the predator balance had completely flipped. The once strong native predators had become victims of a massive resource drain caused by the python's unchecked rise, revealing a predator shift far worse than anyone first expected. The release of the footage, regardless of its blurriness or the supposed silhouette, the discovery still had an immediate impact. It spurred the agencies into action. Whenever a new predator threat or unusual behavior is found, groups like the FWC and USGS typically ramp up their camera networks quickly. trying to cover as much area as possible. This huge expansion was put into motion right away, turning the swamp into a grid of motion-activated surveillance. And the new cameras didn't disappoint. The rapid growth of the python population meant these animals were quickly expanding their range, and signs of their presence showed up everywhere. Trackers and biologists working beyond the national park began reporting fresh, large drag marks and slither trails across several counties, proving that the massive snakes were moving out of the wetlands and into areas with more human activity. These weren't just any snake tracks. They were heavy drag marks left by pythons stretching over 16 feet long, carrying a substantial amount of weight. As the surveillance efforts continued, more cameras began capturing signs of massive movement and significant water disturbance across an even broader and more northern area. This problem had spread far beyond control, expanding across a vast geographic region. In response, agencies have launched an unprecedented, multi-million-dollar campaign to slow the damage. They created the Python Elimination Program and the Python Action Team, PATRIC, which relies on expert private hunters who patrol the swamp around the clock. These hunters know the dangerous wetlands inside and out, and use advanced tools like Judas snakes, which are radio-tagged females designed to lead trackers to breeding grounds. These aggressive methods have resulted in the removal of tens of thousands of pythons from the ecosystem, with these teams accounting for over 60% of all snakes removed since the programs began. This tireless work represents a massive, sustained commitment from the human population to reclaim their environment. But even with all the data collected, the ecological research done, and the hundreds of snakes caught, these solutions are still not enough. And the most disturbing questions still haunt us. The eerie glow of eyes and the enormous shape caught on that breakthrough footage continue to stay in the public's imagination and possibly in the minds of some scientists too. It makes us go back to those unsettling moments in the footage and wonder, was it just a trick of light and shadow, or did we really catch a glimpse of something completely new and unknown? From what the studies show, the python is capable of incredible things, eating a deer whole, growing to enormous lengths, and even adapting to survive in brackish water. These facts feed directly into the real fears experts have about invasive species spiraling out of control, where such animals could mutate or evolve into dominant new predators. It makes you wonder, are we actually witnessing the rise of a super predator that could change the entire ecosystem? The documented ecological imbalance has indeed reached a critical tipping point. Researchers remain uncertain about the maximum size of the largest swamp predator, and they cannot definitively verify the true size of the python seen confronting the alligator in that widely shared footage. This uncertainty fuels an unsettling possibility that Florida might be on the brink of encountering a new apex predator, one that has emerged from decades of ecological disruption and could permanently reshape the future of the American wilderness. But what can we do now to protect these vulnerable ecosystems before it's too late? And are we ready to face the consequences of our environmental choices? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, click on the next video on your screen. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries.